Hello everyone, in this video we will create a React application from scratch and implement it step by step. At the end of the video you will understand the all fundamentals of React. 30 minutes enough? Absolutely. I love creating straight-to-the-point tutorials. There is no repetition of the same things over and over again, as well as no too much detailing that you would probably never use. The focus is just on fundamentals and building a strong base that you can develop any projects you want. Before getting into it, this course is for medium to senior level developers who have at least developed a web application with other technology or have understanding of the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as I will not cover the basics of them. There are many zero to hero courses out there. I would recommend following one of them in case you have no prior HTML web experience. This course is aimed at the quickest way to learn the React for experienced developers. I will publish this tutorial in 3 10-minute videos. Please don't forget to subscribe to get a notification for new videos. Let's have a look at the agenda of this course. Chapter 1. A very short introduction to React. In Chapter 2, we will see the installation, which is very straightforward for React, and we will create our first project. Then Chapter 3. We will understand the components. We will find a free HTML design on the net and bring it into our React application and split it into components. Chapter 3 will be the end of this Part 1 video. In the Part 2 video, Chapter 4, we will start learning about React hooks, and we will begin with the use of state hook. So we will learn about states, and our React application will start loading contents dynamically. We will be responding to the user's click over the web app. Chapter 5. We will learn the data binding in React. We will be able to pass data between the components. Chapter 6. We will learn to use the HTTP REST client to push data into the backend and retrieve data and render it into the screen. By this point, you will be able to develop an application on your own. As most front-end applications today work in this way, use the API and display the results. However, I will suggest going into further parts where we will be looking into other hooks and changing our application to work more effectively. Chapter 6 will be the end of second video. Finally, video part 3 will cover Chapter 7, Use Effect Hook. Chapter 8, Reducer Hook. Chapter 9, Context. Chapter 10, Error Handling. React is a JavaScript library. It's not a framework, but a library. It is the most used front-end development choice by 2023. React is mainly used for creating single-page applications. Let's talk a little about single-page applications. Single-page applications use only one HTML. If we have a look at this sample page, we can split the page into a couple of components. Sidebar at the left, page header at the top, and content. With React, we can dynamically load any part of the component and display a different view. The only HTML file we need is index. This will make more sense once we create our first React application, as I will explain it in action. Let's move to installation. As React is not a framework, installation is super easy and quick. The only installment we will need is Node.js. We'll not do any Node.js development, and we don't need to know anything about it. Node.js allows us to run JavaScript on our local computer, and we need for executing our React application. I will not go into step-by-step Node.js installation as it's pretty straightforward. Simply for Windows machines, you go to the Node.js website, download the installer, and continue with the next with defaults, and the installer will install Node.js. For Mac, there are a few ways to install it. I would recommend using the brew. These two commands are here. If you run it on your terminal in order, it will be installed. For Ubuntu users, executing these 3 comments will install. I will drop the commands in the description in case you would like to copy and paste them on your terminal. And also the installer link for Windows. Once you install Node.js, you can verify it by typing node version on the terminal or command prompt for Windows. Please pause the video now and complete the Node.js installation, as we will be creating the React application as the very first thing next. We are good to go. Let's create our first React application. I created a folder called React Projects in my Documents folder. Please create a folder for your React projects, such as React Projects. I will open the terminal and get there. Open the command prompt for Windows. We can create our first application using a single command. npx create react app is the command. Let's name our app Contacts app, as we will be implementing a contacts application together, an application to manage contacts. React project name should be all lower cases. No capitals are allowed. If we press enter, and it will create and set up the project. A project folder named Contacts app has been created. Let's type cd contacts app on the terminal and get inside the project folder. In order to start the React application, we type the npm start command inside our project folder, so inside the Contacts app folder. It started the application and opened the app on the browser itself. If you see this page, this is the template app created by React. Now open the project in an editor and have a look at the files and template project React created for us. I will be using Visual Studio Code as my development editor, which is a free code editor by Microsoft. You may use any editor you would like, such as Atom, IntelliJ, or even Notepad++. I recommend using Visual Studio Code as I will be using it in this tutorial. You can download the installer from their website free of charge. I will add our Contacts app project folder to Visual Studio Code. To do so, from Files, add folder to Workspace, and I will choose the whole Contacts app folder. Open the project folder using the Visual Studio. Let's quickly go over the file structure and the files React created for us. Node modules folder is the JavaScript libraries. If we install additional packages using the npm, other libraries will come here. We will be fine with out-of-the-box libraries. The public folder is the files accessible throughout the projects. You can keep your static images and assets here. Apart from them, we have the index file. Remember, React is for developing single-page applications and index. Let's have a look inside. It is a pretty simple HTML file. We have the header part with some meta info. We can modify it as required. If you have a look at the body part, which is the view part users will see, it has only one div element with an ID equals root. So the implementation we do in React will be injected here dynamically. Before moving to the src folder, let's quickly have a look at other files React created a Git. Ignore file in case you use Git for source management. You add the files to be excluded from the commit. We will not use Gitted in this video tutorial. Finally, package.json is for project dependencies, which version of React libraries we are, etc. We will not make any changes here either. This is more to change when we need to upgrade the React version. Let's move to the src folder where we will have most of our work. This is where we are implementing the HTML body content and doing our development. The entry point to React applications is index.js. Let's have a look at what index.js does. What we see here is, it is looking for a DOM element with ID equals root. Document.getElementById is a JavaScript concept that is used to find elements. It finds the root div element and replaces it with the content of the app component in our index. We can delete react.strictMode tag. This tag is used for loading the component twice, just to get over possible rendering issues. We will not need it. One common error happening in this step is related to permissions on Mac and Ubuntu computers for Visual Studio. It may not allow the Visual Studio to modify and save the files. You can type the below command. This will sort the permissions, but be careful, this command will make any user open, edit, and run the files under the given folder. So better don't implement anything private under the React projects folder if you have any other users. Or give permissions specifically to the Visual Studio only. So, the app is our first and only component at the moment. As a practice, it is kept as the main or base component. Let's have a look at the app component now. We can make components in two ways: function-based components, class-based components. React recommends using function-based components for new projects, while it still supports class-based components. App here is a function-based component, and it is very easy to create one. We will have a look at the class-based components later on, but we will create our components as function-based. Basically, to make function-based components, we just need to define a JavaScript function that returns a JSX expression. JSX is XML JavaScript, which is very similar to HTML, or partial HTML. Eventually, whatever we have here will be injected into the HTML body of the index. It actually works as this. Component returns JSX, React compiler converts it to a JavaScript, and that JavaScript writes outputs HTML elements. JSX is sort of partial HTML with a few exceptional rules. When we have those exceptions, the reason behind them is this process of converting JSX to a JavaScript mechanism. Let's modify our application. If we delete everything and add a basic one, we can see how it works. Let's add a new paragraph, hello world. If we get to the browser, React already refreshed the page. As you see now, the content of the app component is hello world. Let's talk about the JSX syntax a bit and its rules. As we mentioned earlier, we can use nearly all HTML elements by following a few rules. Rule number 1, we can't return multiple elements at the same level. So if I add another paragraph, it will cause an error. Therefore, if I want to add a second paragraph, we need to wrap it under a root element. One option we can use is div. So if we cover two paragraphs under a div, then it will work because we have a root element. However, covering them with a div element produces an excess div in the final HTML view. Some people prefer covering the content with React.fragment. React.fragment is provided by React as a filler, so you can use it as your root on the JSX expression that will return. If we use React.fragment, it will not produce any excess div in the final HTML. Other and shorter syntax to cover with React fragment is using empty tag syntax. Let's change div to React.fragment. We had a compile error on the browser because we didn't import the React library. Let's import it. It's a good practice to import React library when we create a component. Let's check again. So we created our first application. In the next part, we will develop a meaningful app and We'll split the page into components. Rather than designing our HTML from the beginning, we will use a free HTML template. This is the editorial by HTML5up. I will leave the link in the description so you can download it for free. Thank you, HTML5up. Kudos to you. Click the download button. I will extract the downloaded zip file and save it under React Projects folder for easy access. Let's get inside and double-click on index to see how it looks locally. We would like to carry this template into our React application. I will first open the HTML editorial folder in Visual Studio Code for easy access. Add folder to workspace. I have the Contacts app here and the HTML editorial folder here. Let's have a look at the inside index. In the template we download. This is a complete HTML file with head and body tags. I will first copy the part inside the head and paste it into the index HTML of our React application. Index HTML is under the public folder. Let's delete all and paste. Alright. If you noticed already, we have the CSS references under the head part. We should bring them into the project, otherwise our project will not be able to find them. Let's copy assets and images folders from the HTML editorial folder and paste them under the public folder so it can be accessible. Let's have a look at the index. If we have a look at the bottom of the body part, we see a few JavaScript references. Let's copy and paste it under the body of the index. HTML body is the view users see on the browser. If you remember, React application is replacing the root div with the content of the app component. So we will copy everything under the body into the app component. Let's copy. As we discussed earlier, there are some rules with the JSX. One of them is we can't use HTML tagged comments. Let's remove all the HTML tagged comments. If we need comments, we can use /JavaScript comment. The other thing to remember is all the tags must be closed. HTML is more tolerant of unclosed tags, but JSX doesn't. Some HTML templates, especially the IMG tag, are usually not closed. But for our template, it seems like they did a good job and all tags are closed. Let's see how it looks on the browser. As you can see, we achieved to get the same view. From now on, we can continue development using our React project. If we have a look at app, it returns a very big chunk of JSX expression. This is not ideal from a complexity point of view. We can split it by creating our own components. We will create 3 components: sidebar component for the sidebar menu, header component for the top menu, or top part and content component for the main posts. Let's get started. First, I will create a folder and name it as components. Inside the components folder, I will create a file called sidebarcomponent.js. We will implement our first function-based component in this file. It's a good practice to create the CSS file for the component. We can add any specific CSS requirement for the component. Even though we will not need it, let's create it. Okay, move back to the sidebarcomponent.js file and import the sidebarcomponent.css. Dot means the current folder. Let's import the React library. Okay, now we can write our component. To do so, we will create a function that returns a JSX expression function sidebar component. Return an empty JSX expression for now. Finally, we have to export it to make it available for reuse from other components. Let's export default sidebar component. If we look carefully into the JSX expression in app.js, we can find this div element by sidebar ID. We will copy all the div into the sidebar component and delete this part from the app. Let's copy sidebar component.js and paste it. The sidebar component will be returning this JSX expression. We can now use it from app. Let's open the app.js again. We need to import the component that we will use. Import sidebar. From /components as sidebar component is under the components folder. We don't have to add .js at the end of to, and React will recognize it by name. Now let's delete whole the sidebar div and replace it with the sidebar component. To do so, we can do it by tag. Remember, all the tags need to be closed. So whatever the JSX expression sidebar component returns will be injected here. Our component tree looks like this at the moment. Let's create 2 more components: header component and content component. If we look at the JSX expression in app.js, this highlighted part is the header bit here. I'll first create the header component.css. I'll keep it empty. Now, header component.js. Import the CSS. Import the React library. Create a function named header component. And we will return an empty JSX expression for now. Export the component so it can be used in other components. Let's get back to the app.js, copy it and paste it under the header component's JSX expression. Let's import header component. Delete that part from the JSX and replace it with the header component. All looks good. If we have a look at the JSX expression here, we can see we have multiple posts by div ID equals section. Our content consists of section elements. Let's copy all the sections and paste them under content component. I'll quickly create an empty CSS for the content component. Content component.js. Write an empty function for now. Export default. Let's get back to the app.js and import the content component. Let's copy all the sections and paste them under content component. Okay, as you will remember, JSX expression must have a root element. We don't have the root element, but multiple div section elements here. In order to fix it, let's cover it with React fragment. We now have a root. Let's get to the app.js, import the content component, and delete the sections, and replace it with content component. Our component tree looks like this now. App component looks neat and tidy. We still have a rather large content component on the other hand. Maybe we can split our content component into smaller components too. The content component consists of sections. Each section is a post on the content. We can separate them. We will just create a folder and name it Posts under the Components folder. I will create a component called Banner Post component under it, and I will carry the first section here. Now, let's remove the banner section and copy it under the banner post component. If we open content component again, import the banner post component. Delete the section and replace it with the banner post component. We can do the same for all the other sections here. For now, I will delete the other sections in our expression. We will add other components a little later. As you may see, we have a single section, the first one only on the content. If I add another banner post component here, we will see two of them in our final view. Let's check. That's it for now. We created a React app. We used a design from the web and we split it into easy-to-maintain small components. In the next video, we will learn how to dynamically load the content based on the user's clicks when learning the states. We will create a contacts app where we will be managing our contacts. We will consume a REST API to store manage contacts. Thank you for watching. See you at the next part. Please remember to subscribe to get notified of the next video.